Apart from the humanitarian crisis in the Israel-Hamas war, there is another growing concern among Western leaders and analysts, the conflict expanding across West Asia. One of the most feared and possible escalation scenarios is with Israel's northern neighbor Lebanon, starting with Hezbollah, the Iran-backed militia in Lebanon. Its fighters are attacking Israel from the north ever since the Israel-Hamas war broke out earlier this month. Israel has already enhanced its evacuation efforts along the northern borders with Lebanon, and the latest Israeli aircraft claims to have struck 2 Hezbollah cells in Lebanon. Israel says that they were planning to launch anti-tank missiles and rockets towards Israel. Hezbollah has vast stocks of long-range missiles which could strike almost anywhere in Israel. In terms of military power, Hezbollah is said to be more powerful than Hamas. Various media reports suggest it has a current weapons stockpile of at least 100,000 rockets. Earlier, a senior Hamas leader demanded a multi-front war against Israel, seeking greater involvement from Hezbollah and other groups in the region. Hezbollah's entry to the war could see an intervention by Iran to the conflict. Earlier, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi said that Israel had crossed the red line, which may force everyone to take action. According to experts, Iran's intervention could drag other states in the region directly to the conflict, such as Syria and Iraq. They also added that Israel's allies, US and UK, may also enter the conflict, while highlighting that both nations have already deployed their naval ships near Israel. Recently, US troops in various locations across Iraq and Syria had already come under attack from drones and rockets. After this, the US military struck 2 facilities in eastern Syria. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said the strikes targeted 2 weapons and ammunition storage facilities in eastern Syria used by Iran's Revolutionary Guards. US President Joe Biden's administration is particularly worried that armed groups backed by Iran are preparing to take the conflict on multiple fronts.
And so that's why.
Dr. Hassan Al-Hassan is a research fellow for Middle East policy at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Is now joining us live from Bahrain. Dr. Hassan, welcome to the show. In your view, is there a possibility of this war spilling over in the West Asian region?
Thank you for having me. There certainly is a possibility. It cannot be ruled out, even though I think it's at present a low probability event. And the reason why I think it's a low probability event is primarily because none of the main actors involved want this to escalate into a wider regional conflict. So Israel does not want to fight a multi-front war. The US doesn't want to be part of another war in the region. Hezbollah has actually been rather silent. The Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, has not come out in public to speak about the ongoing conflict and has only advertised 1 meeting with senior Hamas leaders in Beirut. Iran has also stated very clearly that it does not want this war to expand, let alone, of course, the Arab countries, which also don't want the war to drag on or to expand into a wider regional conflict. So none of the actors really want this war to escalate. And I think there is sufficient deterrence capability on all fronts at the moment. Everyone is deterred. So the US has deployed additional military assets to the Eastern Mediterranean. They've deployed air defense systems. They've deployed rapid reaction marine forces and carrier strike groups. Similarly, Iran has clearly shown that it has the ability to not only, of course, involve Hezbollah if this were to ever escalate into an open conflict, but also to activate other fronts in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen. And so I think there is sufficient deterrence on all sides of this equation to prevent this from escalating. Now, however, there's always a chance for miscalculation. There are reports that exchange of fire along the Lebanese-Israeli border has grown in terms of range. So
Dr. Hassan, actually, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Since now we are saying that there's a possibility of this region saying that they do not want this war to escalate, then why are borders in Israel being hampered by Hezbollah? And we also have the Houthi rebels sort of attacking Israel. Why do we have this tension at the borders if at all they do not want this war to escalate?
So cross-border attacks have been happening on all sides. Let's not forget that in addition to the examples that you've rightly mentioned, Israel has also conducted airstrikes against airports in Syria, against Damascus airport, against other airports in Syria as well. And so the carrying out of cross-border strikes has been going on all sides of this equation. In essence, Hezbollah, it is true, does not want this war to escalate, but Hezbollah and by extension Iran also have a credibility requirement because they are part of the so-called axis of resistance. They are Hamas's allies. And so to be able to bolster their credibility, that they have not simply left Hamas to its own devices and left Hamas to fight a much more capable and much more potent adversary, that is Israel, on its own, Hezbollah and Iranian militias are also under the sort of political requirement, under their own political imperative to be seen as doing something. However, I think the rules of engagement between Israel and Hezbollah seem to be fairly well established in the sense that there is a consistent exchange of fire across the Lebanese-Israeli border, but that seems to be limited in scope and intensity so as to not allow things to get out of control.
Dr. Hassan, finally, and I want your brief response to this one. Should the world be cautious or worried of a war spilling over?
Most certainly, because the strategic and economic consequences of that would be devastating. Oil prices would rise significantly, and the potential for spillover would have consequences beyond the region. What I think most countries should do is really lend their voice to the calls for a ceasefire, which is the position of most countries in the world. This was clearly shown at the overwhelming vote in the UN General Assembly. Without a ceasefire, I'm afraid we will see a greater risk for region-wide escalation.
All right, I've been talking to Dr. Hassan Al-Hassan, who's a research fellow for Middle East policy at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Dr. Hassan, thank you for talking to us today.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.